You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. And bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar. My name is Chris Lanuti. I am your solo host for this episode of Sox in the Basement. Ed is off. As you all know, been recovering since his heart attack. And the guy decided he was going to do a little bit more than he probably should have. And he told me today, he's like, I'm taking this show off and I'm going to rest for a day or so. And I said, good for you. That's the most important thing, your rest and your health. So it's just me. We're going to have some fun today on the show. We're going to go through a lot of listener comments. It's something I always want to do, and we never get to it because Ed and I will get into a conversation, and then I won't get to the comments. I won't get to the feedback. I won't get to the things that people leave at soxinthebasement.com. And one of the places that we get the most comments is on the YouTube channel. Now, many of you are listening through Apple Podcast or Spotify or through soxinthebasement.com or one of your favorite podcast players, and that's audio only. And at some point, many of those may have a video option. Like right now, some of the podcasts on the Broadcast Basement On Demand Radio Network have the option on Apple Podcast for you to click a button and switch over to a video mode, but we haven't done that yet with Sox in the Basement. The first thing we're doing is testing the current system because Ed's not able to get down here in his current state, and I don't particularly like the way the video has been going. Like this episode, if you watch on YouTube, has the 4K cameras that I use for in studio when all the guests are in studio or when I go out to a location on some of my shows, I use those. I've yet to find something that links me and Ed that gives me the same video quality, and I'm still trying to figure that out. And I'm a radio guy. I am not a video guy. I think I've tried to make that clear to anybody that asks me. I did morning radio for almost 10 years in different parts of the country. If you asked me my dream job, it would be broadcasting single-A baseball games in the twilight of my life with a bottle of bourbon or a beer up in the booth with me, doing a game that 20 people are listening to in town and just having a good old time. I love the part of radio that's painting a picture, the way that you can try to get some sort of an emotion out of people based upon the inflection of your voice. I was a radio guy, not a TV guy. We're one of the last podcasts to really switch over to video for a reason. It's just something I don't like. And you know, I'm not the only person that feels that way. You know, Len Casper, who's right now the voice of the Sox on the radio, remember, was on TV. And all he wanted to do was radio. He took that job because, and if you remember the interviews that he gave, he liked the idea of radio broadcast, of painting that picture. It's a very different thing during a baseball game or any sporting event. The radio broadcast is always far more detailed. The broadcaster has to use the sound that's in the background. If you have a good sound engineer and you've heard the radio broadcast, when the sound is on, you can hear the crowd and you can get a feel for the game. You're a good broadcaster, a good play-by-play guy, instead of talking about his golf game, will sit down and talk about the shortstop moving a little bit to the left, the outfielder cheating in, the anticipation on the field, the sweat coming off the brow of the pitcher, the catcher taking his time behind the plate trying to settle him down. All those things will be thrown into the play-by-play call. One of my favorite guys to listen to, who's not with the White Sox anymore, was John Rooney. John Rooney's like one of my favorite guys that I've ever listened to on any broadcast, TV or radio, because he could paint a picture. And I remember I met Ed Farmer a few times before Ed passed on. He was a sweet guy. In fact, when Sox in the Basement first started, he came and met me in Kitty O'Shea's because he had heard the podcast. I didn't know this. And he had seen that we had been handing out Sox in the Basement hats, and he had DJ with him. And he came over and just talked to a guy who he didn't even know in me sitting at the bar, and there was a picture of us, and if I can find it, I'll throw it up on the YouTube channel. And if you look at the picture, he's got this big smile on his face. He don't even know who I am. He just met me. He just met me. We had a beer. And he was just asking me about this podcast thing. Because that's when they were all new. That's like when the White Sox podcast thing was like a brand new thing. And I just happened to be the guy that he decided to ask about it. And you could tell Darren Jackson was kind of like, hey, can we just get something to eat and get out of here? Like he was just being nice. Farmio was interested. And I got the opportunity to kind of ask him a couple questions about Rooney because I'm a fan of John Rooney. And he worked in the booth with him. You know, the younger fans may not remember that. But through 05, it was Rooney. Rooney's call in the World Series at the end of the game is spectacular. It's extremely descriptive. The ground ball up the middle, over the head of Jenks. Uribe has it. Bouncing ball, I think he goes. Uribe has it. He throws. Out. A White Sox winner in a world championship. The White Sox have won the World Series, and they're mobbing each other on the field. It's the best call of it. Whenever you see the video matched up with Rooney's call, that's the call. You know, most of us didn't hear it because we were watching it on TV. But when you see the highlight videos, that's the call. And Farmer would get to do like one inning, and he just happens to be the guy doing the inning when they come back from commercial. And I don't even know if he was meant to do the inning. I think they came back quick. I think I've heard that story before. But for some reason in the 8th inning of game 2, when they come right back from break, and Chad Qualls has come in for the Astros, and his first pitch, Canerico connects. Now, I got nothing against Ed Farmer, but he's a former pitcher. The call is great in its simplicity. It's better with the video, though, because the video shows everything that's happening. Because all Farmer's yelling is, you know, swing and a blast, Sox lead, 6-4, light it up. There's not a lot said about that moment, right? It's a perfect TV call. And Farmer got much better. And when we were talking, he even said it. He's like, John Rooney, great broadcaster. I mean, that's who I learned everything from, and I couldn't learn everything. I think he said something to the effect of like, I couldn't do everything he did, but that's what he did. That's a guy who had done that forever. I've always envied the play-by-play guys who do it on the radio. It's my dream job. So it's also the reason why I'm a radio creature. It's hard for me to go to video. And doing the video stuff, which is now available on the YouTube channel, and the subscribers are climbing because we finally have video on that. And I think the more consistent it gets on there, the more people will subscribe to it. And I don't care if you listen through a podcast app or if you prefer YouTube or if you want to check out the video every once in a while. It's nothing that special. Like, to me, it's like you could see us sitting at the bar, right? I mean, every once in a while I might be able to throw a picture up, or, you know, there might be video to go with audio, but we haven't even gotten to that yet. And the last one that we did before this one, for some reason, the stupid system that I'm using switched what side we were on. So for most of the video, I have my back to Ed. Like, we should be on different sides of the split screen. It's really stupid. So there's a lot that we have to do on it. But if you are watching the video on YouTube, people are leaving comments. And that's the point. I want to go through some of the listener comments today on the show. And YouTube is like the best place to get them. So I'm going to try to work through them most recent on back, because the most recent ones are the most relevant ones to the show. And they're people that are trying to get input on what's going on in spring training and their opinion based upon things that we've said. And some of these are complaints. Some of these are, yeah, you're right. Some of these, they're all different. The most recent one has nothing to do with baseball. Oscar says, hey guys, a fan of the show. Listen to the show when it drops. That Brother Rice hoodie is fire. Class of 09. Last episode that came out, I was wearing a Brother Rice hoodie. I am an alum of Brother Rice, class of 1995. And I don't put it on very often. And I am wearing a Brother Rice hat tonight because they just won the basketball sectional championships for the first time in 20 years. They did it when I was there, and I graduated in 95. In 94, my junior year, they did it. My son's a junior there now, and they win it on Friday night over Lamont. And I will wear the Brother Rice stuff on this show as a proud alum and say, we are BR, and congrats to the team and good luck in the super sectionals as a proud alum. But you will not get me wearing it on the Lamont Unlocked podcast that I'm also on. I already talked with a buddy of mine. I was like, dare me to wear all the Rice gear? on the next Lamont Unlocked podcast, and he just started laughing. Like, that's going to end that show really quickly. So if you are from Lamont and you watch both shows, please don't get mad at me. I'm an alum. I'm proud of our guys. Okay, and I'm going to wear the right stuff. I won't wear it on the Lamont Unlocked show now. I think that'd be wrong for me to do. But congrats to Brother Rice winning that championship. All right, let's go on to another one. Keith says, Montgomery has never impressed me. He's another Carson Fulmer. How quickly we forget. I don't know if I would compare Colson Montgomery to Carson Fulmer. I mean, I guess you could say high draft pick. People wanted him to work out. I don't know if I felt like Fulmer was rushed. Like, I worry that Montgomery's going to be Gordon Beckham, or that Montgomery's going to be Andrew Vaughn, somebody that just wasn't ready when they got here. There's different reasons why those guys were brought to the majors. Gordon, I think, was brought in because the team needed a PR push. I mean, he got applause at his first at bat because they just needed something to cheer for, this fan base. And Vaughn was brought up because they believed the rebuild was done when it wasn't. They had not kept the ingredients in the pan in the oven long enough, and they brought him up, and then they put him out of position, and they probably should have given him more at-bats. So there were different reasons for it, and Montgomery would be more like Gordon. It would be more like Gordon Beckham, because this is almost like we need to get our big star here in front of the cameras if he starts the season with this team. He's had back spasms. Supposedly is starting at some point this weekend in one of the games, supposedly coming back. But unless he goes on an absolute tear, I don't know how you justify breaking camp with him at shortstop. And we're going to go through how everybody's doing in spring training right now. And I think you could find somebody at every position right now based upon what they've done to this point in the spring. And then you could name guys that, because of their pedigree or the intent of the team, should have spots on the team. And Colson Montgomery doesn't qualify in either regard. Sox in the Basement listeners and viewers, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales, not in your kitchen. They're in their showroom with a full example of everything. Glass designs on display. You want to see a specific doorknob? It's there. Forget pictures in a book. Touch it, feel it, see it. Owner in showroom and on site to answer any questions. All their own installers. They don't farm out the work. That's how they get it done right every time. They've been doing it that way in Oak Forest since 1985 with all major brands, custom made, no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is located a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. The YouTube viewers got to see me take a drink of my beer at the bar. It's Friday night. It's my son's birthday as I'm recording this. And I would have gotten this done much earlier in the day. But the poor kid's dealing with the stomach flu that I had earlier in the week. His whole birthday's ruined. I feel terrible for him. Like, he was going to be dad and son going out on the town tonight for his birthday. And that was what the plan was, 17 years old. And the poor kid is just having the roughest day. He's getting the rain check from dad. I'm going to have to do it up bigger for him when he feels better. Let's take a look here at, before we get to more of these comments, let's take a look at where some of the players in spring training are. We've talked about this on previous shows. What will the White Sox do? Are the Sox going to make their decisions based upon what they already wanted going into the spring with players at different positions? Or can you actually win a job with your performance in spring? And I know these are small sample sizes, but let's say we were actually keeping a tally. We were keeping score. And we were keeping current leaders at all of the positions. Which would be an interesting way to do it for a team that lost over 120 games, right? Like, you could make an argument that's what they should be doing because nobody's assured of a job. And if I did that right now, I could make the argument that your first baseman would be Brandon Drury, who's played in 8 games, and 8 is the most of any player. There are other guys that have 8. Some have 7, some have 8, a couple of 5s and 6s. In terms of at-bats, I think Drury has 23, which is the most amount of at-bats so far in spring by one player. He's hitting .348, a .375 on-base percentage, .696 slugging for a .1071 OPS. Now, that's not what he's going to do this year, But that's a guy who's earning a job. And he can stand at first, he can stand at second, he can stand at third. I'm saying he's won the first base job at this point because you got to put Nick Maton, a guy who Fangraphs when the White Sox went out and got him. I think with the Orioles beforehand. He's had 8 games as well. He's had less at bats, only 12 of them. He's hitting .250 with a .357 on base percentage, slugging .750 with an .1107 OPS because he's got 2 homers so far and 3 driven in. If you're going off of how a guy is performing, Nick Maton is making an argument for a job, and he's a guy who also can play, I'm going to look it up real quick here. He has played third and short. So keep that in mind as we're trying to talk about guys that are playing well and trying to make this team. And will it actually matter how they play? So I could make the argument Drury at first, Maton at second, Lenin Sosa at third. 6 games he's played in, 15 at bats. He's got 6 hits. He's 6 for 15, hitting .400. He's got 2 doubles, 5 RBI. He's got a .471 on base percentage, a .533 slugging percentage with an OPS of .1004. Another guy over 1,000 OPS in a small sample size, but who has shown up and said, maybe what I did in the back half of last year was real. And maybe you shouldn't just discard me, as some people have said, oh, it'll be hard for Lenin Sosa to make this team. He's at least doing something in the early going. And so I can sit there and say, those 3 guys are there. Who's going to play short, Chris? Well, if we were going off of how they're doing so far in spring, over 6 games, Tristan Gray, who has gotten some opportunity at shortstop, is hitting .273 with an .886 OPS. Now, that's not world-beating in spring training in a small sample size, but it's a lot better than everybody else that could play the position. And what's interesting is that in the minor leagues, and he was through Pittsburgh, I believe. He was drafted a few times and didn't go to the team, and I think he went to college, and then he eventually ends up like a 13th round pick for the Pirates, and then he works his way through their system. He's 28 now. He's only had a minuscule amount of games in the majors. And I think he only played 1 game at short, or only a couple games at short at the major league level. But in the minor leagues, he played more games at short than any other position that he plays at. And the White Sox are working him out as short. And of all the names that showed up at spring, Jacob Amaya's given it a shot. You got Chase Mydroth, who you acquired from the Red Sox, who they want to give the opportunity to. Colson Montgomery, again, we just talked about it. They want to give him an opportunity to be on the team. Tristan Gray's earning it. And then you could say, okay, and Andrew Vaughn. So maybe Lenin Sosa becomes a designated hitter, or all these 5 guys move around in some sort of little jigsaw puzzle. Because Vaughn isn't doing terribly. Like, I don't want to poo-poo him. He's hitting .286 with a .643 OPS. The power isn't there, but he's 4 for 14 right now. He's not losing a job over 5 games. So I would say those 5 guys for those 4 spots, and one of them is rotating around, or some of them are rotating around. Like, that's your 5-man infield because guys get days off. That's who's earning it right now in the infield. Who's not earning it in the infield? Well, Miguel Vargas is not earning it in the infield. He did get a hit just recently, so he's up to hitting .214, but he's not doing anything special. Chase Mydroth's hitting .143. Josh Rojas, there's a guy who's in danger. There's a guy you don't have too much loyalty to, just got onto the team. And, it's not like you're paying him a ton of money. He's hitting .188. He better watch himself, unless they promised him a job and we don't know it yet. He's not doing very well at all. Jacob Amaya's hitting .071. Remember when they said that Bobby Dahlbeck's going to give it a go to get himself going? 6 games, he hasn't gotten a hit yet. So there's guys who have shown up and have not shown anything. There are guys that the team has said, hey, we think this is our third baseman, let's say, or we think this is our shortstop, who haven't been able to show it. And then there's guys who have shown up and said, hey, I want a job. And I think there's something to be said for the hunger that's being displayed there. You need to reward that after you had such a morose team last year, a team that really just gave up at the end. They should never, ever have lost that many games. That last month or so, month and a half, 2 months, That was a team that just didn't care. I mean, they could say that they care, but their body language and the way that they were playing, that was just a drained dugout. And I want the guys that have the hunger, that showed up in spring, worked in the offseason, said, I'm coming in winning a job. I think you got to look at those guys and say, you know what? Maybe that guy deserves a job. And some of your comments, we'll get back to the comments, they kind of back this up. Wolf says, and he's aggravated with me here, geez, man, it's not as though they can't go back on Vargas. Nothing is set in stone despite what they've said. That's what I'm hoping, Wolf. Like when I talk about why would you name him the third baseman at the beginning of camp? You're right. They can go back. They should go back. If he doesn't perform well, they definitely should go back on it. That's what we're trying to say. What I'm saying is don't name anybody. Like, I don't understand the reasoning for naming Miguel Vargas. And there are a lot of comments over the last week or two in which people are saying, like William chimed in on the YouTube channel. I think Sosa should be the third baseman because Vargas isn't ever going to be a good major league hitter. I think they should just get out. I think they should just cut ties with him. I'm looking through my microphone filter here while I read. I have to set this up differently for the next show. There's a lot of I'm scrolling through here. Put Rojas at third. A lot of why isn't Sosa in the mix for third base? Keith asked that question 9 days ago on the YouTube channel. In fact, as I scroll back, Sosa, I think, gets mentioned more than anybody in our feed right now because I think a lot of listeners are seeing the same thing that we're seeing. A guy to turn it on at the end of the year, a guy that level after level after level struggles when he gets regular at bats, figures it out, hits really well. He's not good defensively, but you know what? You need a bat. This team has struggled with offense, and just because he's not high pedigree, he may earn it with what he did at the end of the year last year when everybody else was falling apart. I mean, think about it. You gave Andrew Vaughn $6 million in arbitration. And one of the things that we've heard, Scott Merkin was on this show. One of these things, he never gave up. It's those leadership qualities, right? It's those clubhouse qualities. You could even argue lead by example. Well, what was Lenny Sosa doing? He was kicking butt. And he showed up in camp, and he's still kicking butt. And that may change in a week or so. It could very easily be, next week I'd be sitting there going, well, Sosa's down to a pedestrian 220. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm saying right now, look at what he's doing. And I think it should matter. If anything, it's just something interesting for us to talk about. That said, it is now time for the Sox Nerd. The Sox Nerd, Dave Marin, puts all those tidbits and trivia nuggets up on the scoreboard at the rate. He cannot wait for the season to start, and he is brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and check out everything that they have going on, along with the brand new Lamont Unlocked podcast at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, I will not be wearing this hat that you can see on the YouTube channel on that show. What do you got for me?
Chris, there have been reports that Davis Martin is going to be the White Sox opening day starter. So let's dig into that scenario, shall we? First off, it would be a great story. After all, this is a guy who was a marginal prospect who returned from Tommy John surgery in 2023 to become a legit candidate for a Game 1 assignment. It wouldn't surprise me if some sentimentality played into this decision. After all, this is the organization that brought back Minnie Minoso, Ron Kittle, Harold Baines, Jerry Hairston, and Tony La Russa for encores. Martin, though, is on his way to earning this honor. In his first 2 spring starts, the right-hander threw 4 shutout innings while allowing only 1 hit. He fanned 5, including a looking Shohei Ohtani, while firing 37 of his 50 offerings for strikes. Martin doesn't have much of a track record, but he has had some success on the big league level, mostly as a long reliever. In fairness, Martin's numbers are skewed thanks to a disastrous outing in the 2023 finale where he got injured and gave up 9 earned runs in 1 2/3 innings. Those were the most runs ever surrendered by an American League pitcher in a Game 162. Removing that dud from his career starting stats dips his ERA from 4.91 to 4.11. Should he get the ball on March 27th, it won't be Martin's first opening day assignment. Martin was the starter and winner in Texas Tech's Curtain Raisers in 2017 and 2018, and he pitched well at AA Birmingham's premiere in 2022. Should Martin go in the opener, it will mark the second year in a row the Sox starter is coming off a winless season. Garrett Crochet started the premiere last year after a winless 2023. The only other Sox opening day starter coming off a winless season was Patsy Flaherty in 1903. No matter what happens, though, should Martin earn that nod, he can say he was an opening day starter for the Chicago White Sox, an American League charter franchise, just like Burley, Lyons, Faber, Walsh, and Seaver. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. In addition to the daily Sox list on my blog, I am still tweeting about Sox birthdays every day. My zinger? In honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. Did you know, Chris, the youngest member of the '05 champs was 21-year-old little-known infielder Pedro Lopez, who played 2 games that year. The old man of that squad was 39-year-old Orlando El Duque Hernandez. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Davis Martin, Jerry Hairston, Texas Tech, and Patsy Flaherty.
Luis Robert Jr.'s winning a job. Like, there's the guy that you wanted to see perform well. 7 games, 17 at-bats. He's 6 for 17 with 3 runs scored. He's got a double. He's got 2 home runs. He's knocked in 4. 2 walks to 4 strikeouts. Hitting .353 with a .421 on-base percentage, .765 slugging, and 1186 OPS. And Getsy, hold out for the best offer. Because teams are going to notice this if it keeps up. They're going to go, oh, wait. When he's healthy, he's good still. And he's ready to play. And wouldn't I love to have that in my center field? And I do think he gets dealt, and I think he gets dealt way before the deadline. I think he gets dealt before June 1st if they get the right deal. I really think it's all about maximizing value. Chris Getz knows what he wants for Luis Robert Jr., and when somebody finally says it's time to pull the trigger before another team pulls the trigger, you're going to see it happen quickly. For now, though, he's definitely earned the center field spot. I don't know how many other outfielders are earning anything. The one guy that I'm kind of intrigued by is Oscar Colas. 9 games so far. Again, going back to the idea of it's a small sample size, but if we're really paying attention to how guys showed up in camp and how they're performing in it right now, he's 4 for 15. That's a .267 batting average, which, by the way, would make him one of the best outfielders out there offensively. He's got a .313 on base percentage. It ain't great. He's got a .400 slugging percentage. Not great, but a .713 OPS is around league average. Probably about 10 points lower than what the league average in baseball is going to be this year. And, you get a guy that's over 700 with the OPS. If nobody else can get near it, he may be somebody that you're sitting there saying it's time to give him his opportunity in the majors. I don't know what else he can do in the minor leagues. And so I think if he does that at least throughout spring training, if that's where he ends up, I think he's got to break camp and go with the team. You take Talkman and you put him out in the outfield along with Robert Jr. and Oscar Colas with Benintendi injured. You let Colas start the season out there. I don't know who the 4th outfielder is. I don't know if you take 5 in total. But I think that you have to do that. The catching thing's also really interesting. I mentioned the other day that I have not seen Edgar Caro in any of the official lineups. I know they do split squad games. Like, Caro's got 5 games he's played in. Adam Hackenberg has played in 5 games. I don't see them in the official lineup, so it's like they're not playing with the main team. Kyle Teal has 7 games, another guy I don't see in the lineup. Teal, by the way, getting on base at a .444 clip. He's got an 1111 OPS, but he's only hit 167, and again, that's because he's only had 6 at bats in 7 games. So he's not playing the full game when he's out there. But all of these guys, I mean, Carroll's hitting 300 in his competition. Hackenberg's hitting 600 in the few at-bats that he's getting. The lower catchers on the list, the two big prospects and the guy that has like a puncher's chance of making this team in Hackenberg and is likely headed for AAA or wherever they end up having to place him, they're performing very well. And the other catchers are actually not performing bad at all. I mean, Omar Narvaez, I think you're the odd man out. You're only hitting 222. But at this point, Corey Lee, 333, 777 OPS, small sample size. Matt Thies, I mentioned him in the last show. 6 games, 17 at-bats. He's 6 for 17. That's way better than what he normally does in his career. But he showed up in spring and said, I'm going to take advantage of subpar pitching and hit 353 to this point with an 824 OPS. And I'm going to get that backup job behind Corey Lee. And it's interesting because if you would have asked me before spring started, I thought they were really going to push Carroll. You looked at the interviews that he was doing, that guy seemed convinced he was breaking camp with this team. So again, it's very interesting what's happening in front of your face in the games. And they are really spreading out most of these guys and giving them equal playing time. Some guys are getting a lot, though. Brandon Drury, like I said, he's getting a lot of at-bats, and he's doing something with it. And if you're another NRI or even a guy that got a contract thinking, well, my 1-year deal with this team means that I've got a spot, I don't know if you do. If a guy like that is hitting well and saying, no, I'm going back to the majors this year. Other teams didn't believe in me, but I believe in me. And that's the guy I want on my team. I'm looking at those guys. I hope the front office is looking at those guys. If you're looking at us on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening to us, thank you so much. Ed will be back on the next show. Sox in the Basement. Have a great weekend. Go Crusaders.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.